Another video in the training principles series. Talked about progressive overload the first time. If you want to get stronger and if you want to get bigger, you got to do something to make your body adapt. And then the second one was specificity. You can go watch that video. I won't rehash everything in it, but very important, often overlooked and underappreciated, the specificity. The next one is reversibility. What the heck does that mean? It means you lose your gains, man. So let's talk about how that happens, who should be most worried about it, and how to preserve those gains. Before I do though, subscribe to the channel. You know the drill. Make those Lambo dreams come true for me. I need to get to that 1,000 subs. Like the video too if you like it. All right. So reversibility, what the heck is it? Well, just like I said before, you can lose your gains, man. And how fast you lose your gains depends on a lot of factors. Number one, who you are, how much training you've done. And then what are we talking about? So, for example, strength gains, speed gains, right? Speed gains can deteriorate a little bit faster than strength gains, and strength gains deteriorate a little faster than do cardiovascular gains. Okay, now there's that kind of general, very general understanding. But I'm going to throw something else in there. It depends on how long you've been training. So, Verkhoshansky used to talk about the stability of training. Basically, if the longer you train, the more physiological changes that have occurred that are more stable or more permanent. So, for example, if you do a lot of cardiovascular training, a lot of endurance type of training, your blood volume goes up. That's more of an acute kind of thing, changes pretty quickly. But what over time, if you continue to work on your cardiovascular fitness, you'll start to have capillary density increase, called angiogenesis. And so that improves blood flow delivery, right? You could have heart size increase, right? So these are a little bit more permanent changes. So if you had a time away from training, you're going to see losses, but you're not going to see a significant loss, let's say, as somebody who just started out in the last 2 weeks. When they stop training, they will go back to baseline a lot quicker, just because a lot of those more permanent processes hadn't really, they've started, but they haven't really, become concrete. And so, the same with strength training in the area of, especially when we talk about muscle hypertrophy. Once you build muscle mass, skeletal muscle mass, it can be lost, certainly, and especially with aging. It can atrophy, but recapturing that mass is a little bit easier than building it in the first place. And then the more mass you build, obviously, the more structure. Think of like a skyscraper with all the structures around it when it's being built. The scaffolding can fall over fairly easy, right? The wind can blow them over, but the building itself is pretty solid, right? And so if you've been training for a while, you have some pretty solid structures in there. And this could be, again, just the simple size of the muscle, skeletal muscle, the cross-sectional area is larger. And so when you take some time away, or there's some time away from training, maybe that's not voluntary, you will lose skeletal muscle mass, but you're not going to lose all that cross-sectional area. You're still going to retain some of the strength. Neurologically, yes, you will lose. Think of it like riding a bike. Okay, I can ride a bike now, and I don't ride a bike very much anymore. But I rode a bike a lot as a kid, so I have that neurological blueprint. What some people call muscle memory is really in the neurological system. You see in the videos, like, that's actually a misnomer. It's not really. Muscles do remember, but not in that way. Muscles remember when they grow. That's why, like. Yeah, we'll get mononuclear domain theory and all that stuff, but I'll stay out of the weeds. Essentially, though, that there is a pattern. I think I've told the story on the channel of meeting, former heavyweight boxer, Greg Moore on an airplane a long time ago, 1984 world champion. I mean, he could still throw punches. He could still hurt me, but his punches are still good. They're just not as powerful as they were, right? Because that's what aging does to you. It kind of guts the strength part, but the pattern is still there. And the same with like just general strength training. There's a neurological component, right? Your body knows how to coordinate movement with a load, and so a couple sessions and you restore that strength. Okay, so those are just some examples. Speed, does deteriorate a little bit faster. A lot of it is coordinative as well, and then certainly that force part as a piece of it too. So working, if we looked at what do I want to moving into now, like how do I preserve? What do I preserve? Things like speed. High velocity movements, those can be done more frequently. In fact, they should be done more frequently with less volume, because fatigue is the enemy of that type of work. That doesn't mean though, like if you're a 100-meter sprinter, you should do 100-meter sprints every day. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying you should move fast. So like if you look at 100-meter sprint, like trained individuals, they don't do 100 meters very often. They do other stuff though, shorter distances, footwork drills, everything just to move fast. So that's what I mean by that. I'm not advocating doing the same thing all the time. I'm just saying moving fast frequently is a good idea. So like if it was an athlete 3 to 4 days a week doing some speed training of some sort or plyos, especially as the season's getting closer, something important is getting close, that would be a good time to do that. Without getting in the weeds on periodization, you wouldn't want to do that year round though. You would just want to do it in periods when being fast is really going to be important. You're leading up to those important times. But for the if you were doing like quote unquote functional training or some variant of that, you can do speed pretty frequently. Again, it's better to think about specificity, do lower volume. Otherwise, it turns into conditioning, right? Lower volume more frequently. So that preserves speed and speed of movement really well. Strength. The nice thing about strength, the literature and kind of experience, you can go about a week before you really see a loss. That's where really well done tapers and stuff like that are very, very helpful, especially if you have a hard training cycle leading up to it. You could go up to 2 weeks without doing much, but you will start to see the strength losses in that second week. It's not like they all go away. Again, the more strength training you've done, the better. But after those 2 weeks, you'll start to see some pretty good losses. Now, here's the deal. Here's the beauty of hold on a minute. I won't get ahead of myself. Conditioning. Same thing in terms of how long you've been training. You'll lose that blood volume change pretty readily, roughly 48 hours. It's not like it all goes away. Okay, more blood volume, better, right? But doing any sort of training is going to be helpful. All right. With that said, what kind of training? Okay, I'm fond of saying volume builds, volume kills. You have to be very, very careful with that sword. Intensity holds. So the beauty of holding all these things, speed, strength, your general cardiovascular conditioning, is you can do a low volume bout and maintain. So for example, the conditioning, you could do a more of an interval type of program, not very high in volume, but go hard, and it'll do a lot. I'm saying to retain all of it, like especially again depends if you've been doing 15 miles. It may not retain all of it, but man, it's gonna be a significant contribution to holding that blood volume. Right, so you could do some bike sprints or something, or a shorter distance. Right, this again, this all plays in the idea of tapering. Okay, you keep the intensity high. Strength training. If you lifted something heavy a couple times during a week, which is very common, like in strength conditioning, to maintain strength gains, you will maintain your strength gains. You won't get stronger, right? But you're going to maintain. Okay, and then speed, like I mentioned before, do a couple fast movements, and that's it. That's all it takes. Retention is easy. Retention is easy, and that's really predicated on intensity. So that's reversibility. Again, the longer you go, the more stability you have in your training because the more physiological changes have occurred. And then when it comes to retaining what variable of programming should you really focus on, that would be the intensity. Again, very helpful during tapers, volumes, and deloads to some degree, depending on what your deload is going to look like. But having that intensity stay high can really hold things very, very well across. I just used 3 examples, but there's other constructs too, out there like change of direction, etc. But they're all kind of akin to one of these other categories, speed, etc. All right, hopefully that was helpful. Reversibility, train hard, train long. Know that you don't lose your gains really, really fast. If you do, need time away, just keep the intensity high and you'll be in good shape. See you in the next one.